You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Migaki, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers.
Wow, here we are. We are back with another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out. I just got back from Gearfest. I am absolutely exhausted, but I did get a lot of great content while I was there, and I am very excited to share those episodes with you. Some of them are short, some of them are longer, and none of them would have happened without Sweetwater. So thank you for having me out and supplying all the people and all the space and all of the festivities that Sweetwater has to offer. It was a really great time. I really enjoyed it, and I was stoked that they invited me back out again. So thank you to everybody at Sweetwater for that one, especially Tyler, Ryan, Josh, and Hunter. Thank you all for all of your work. Thank you for all your help. I really appreciated being a part of that. Thank you guys very much. Now, on to one of the more unique episodes in this podcast history. I feel like I've been saying that a lot lately, but it is still true every single time. This one is very different, though. This one, I am talking to a man who's had an actual Hollywood film made based around his life because he had such an insane thing happen to him. So, for the first half hour or so, David and I talk about his life and the film War Dogs. And actually, this all ties together back into music gear, which is the craziest thing. War Dogs was a movie made by Todd Phillips. If you don't know him, you almost certainly have heard of his movies like The Hangover, The Joker, and War Dogs, which happened in between those two. David is played by Miles Teller, who stars opposite of Jonah Hill. It is an absolute bonkers movie, and I will let David fill you in on his view on the accuracy of it. But let's just say it is a tale of an arms deal gone very, 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 very wrong. So how does that tie into guitar pedals? It does, actually. So I'll let David tell you all about it. Let's get into this episode right now with Mr. David Packouz. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have David Packouz of Singular Sound. Wow, I couldn't talk there for a second. How's it going, dude?
It's going good. Thank you.
Yeah, I was really excited to talk to you. I don't even know the full story yet, but knowing what little I do, you have to have one of the wildest and most interesting stories of anyone I've ever had on this podcast.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I could barely believe it myself sometimes.
I want to get into it because it's like, of course, as a lot of people are familiar, you had a very successful movie made about with you as the main character called War Dogs back in, I believe it was 2016, 2017,
correct,
something like that.
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah, I rewatched it again the other night because it'd been a while, and I had to reacquaint myself with how insane that story was.
Yeah.
To put a bow on it for the listeners who don't have time to sit down and watch the whole movie before they listen to this podcast, you were essentially doing arms deals, and somehow that led to making audio equipment, and I want to know from your perspective how in the world all of that happened, because it is one of the most insane things I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's I've had quite the career trajectory, I guess you could say. I've always been a musician. I've been singing as long as I can remember. Ever since I was a little kid, some of my earliest memories singing was my dad. So I was very lucky that my mother is an amazing singer, and she's a guitarist as well. And my dad can't sing a note to save his life. So I really won the luck of the draw there as far as the genetics go. So I got my mom singing voice. I'm one of 9 children, and
Whoa.
large family, and only 3 of us out of the 9 can sing. So, I feel very lucky. It's really interesting how genetics plays a role in that. But so I've always been a singer. When I was 15, my mom taught me how to play guitar. I was mostly into rock and roll, and she was mostly into folk music. So not exactly the same style, but she started me off on the open note chords rhythm with acoustic, and I kind of moved to Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots and Metallica from there. And
sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I grew up in the 90s, so that was what was cool at the time, and in my opinion, still cool, but still cool, forever cool.
Yep,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So I've always been a musician. Had a dream, I guess, as most teenage boys do, of becoming a rock star and selling out stadiums and all that. But I've always had a entrepreneurial and a practical streak to me as well. So I knew that it wasn't something I could necessarily rely on. I wasn't comfortable just like, as I very admire some people do, just go all out and, no safety net and just do the music thing 100%. I couldn't do that. So I've always had a few side hustles. I was going through college to study chemistry because I've always had a knack for math and sciences. So and everyone told me that a hard science degree was a good guarantee of future employment. So
sure,
a good safety net. So I was studying chemistry. I had a few side hustles. I was buying SD cards and selling them from China and selling them on eBay. And that's when I was 23 is when I bumped into my old friend Ephraim DeVeroli, who's played by Jonah Hill in the movie, and got into the whole arms business as depicted in the film. For people who've seen it, I will. And people always ask me how realistic the film is.
That was going to be a question, of course.
Yeah. And I would say it's about like 70% accurate. It's mostly
even that's whoa.
It's mostly accurate, but there's large chunks of it that are Hollywood, because they need to have a certain formula in Hollywood movies, and they need a certain amount of comedy, a certain amount of drama, a certain amount of action, and a certain story arc that fits within an hour and a half to 2 hours. And
sure.
if your actual story doesn't fit that formula, then they change it. And they don't feel bad about that. That's Hollywood's famous for that. So most of it is true. We really did win a $300 million contract in our early 20s to arm the entire Afghan National Army and Police through the U.S. Army. And most people, as far as accuracy in the movie goes, most people ask me whether I actually drove through the Triangle of Death in Iraq.
Of course,
because that's one of the action highlights of the movie. And the answer to that is a little bit nuanced. I didn't drive through. My partner and I at the time, we did not drive through Iraq. I'd like to think we were smarter than that. But the guy who wrote the screenplay, so it is a true story, the part driving through the Triangle of Death. It just didn't happen to us. It actually happened to the screenwriter of the film, Stephen Chin, who wrote the screenplay. And in 2003, he wanted to write a screenplay about these 2 American contractors who were actually in Baghdad at the time. And that script never ended up being made into a film, but it was pretty widely respected in the Hollywood circles. So that's why he got the job to write the story about war dogs. So in order to meet these guys in Iraq, Stephen flew. He couldn't get a direct flight to Baghdad. There were no commercial flights at the time. So, so he bought a flight to Jordan and hired a Jordanian to drive him into Iraq and to Baghdad. And he didn't realize what he was getting into, of course. And he drove through the Triangle of Death and got shot at and got saved by the U.S. Army, like they show in the film. So that part is actually true. It just happened to the screenwriter, not to us. So
that's wild.
Yeah. Other things people ask me is whether I was actually kidnapped in Albania, and no, I was never kidnapped in Albania. We were dealing with the actual mob. Obviously, we didn't know it at the time. We found out later when the our story got into the papers, and there were all sorts of investigative journalism being done. But we were dealing with Albanian mobsters who seemed to be bribing the government, and so there were a lot of like shady things going on. But luckily, I was not kidnapped. I never felt, actually, the only time I really felt like my life was in danger was actually when I quit the business because my former partner, Ephraim, who's being played by Jonah Hill, as I mentioned, decided to screw me out of all the money that we had made together. And he owed me quite a few $1 million. And I quit and was filing a lawsuit against him to get the money that was owed to me. And I figured at the time that he might think and it would have been quite a lot cheaper to have someone knock me off than to actually pay me the money that was owed to me. So that was when I started feeling nervous. And that was actually when I bought my first handgun that I'd ever owned. Up until that point, I'd never even owned a gun, even though we were some of the largest.
You'd sold quite a few.
Sold quite a few, but I never actually owned one personally until that point. So that was the only time I really felt my life was possibly in serious danger. I mean, there was a book written about the film. They renamed it War Dogs in order to capitalize off the film's fame. Sure. So if anyone wants to know the real story, the movie is good. I was very happy with the movie.
You were in it.
Yeah, I was. So. That's right. I had a little cameo I think in the first 5 minutes, I'm playing guitar and singing. So that was cool. Yeah. I wanted to sing one of my original songs because I'm a singer-songwriter. I write songs and I've recorded some songs, and of course, I thought into myself, hey, this is my big chance to get my music into a big Hollywood film. I mean, how could they say no? They're making the movie about me, right? And they told me, no, you're going to sing this song we picked, which was Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult. And they thought it was hilarious because I was singing it to a room full of like 80 and 90-year-olds. So that was the joke. And they're like, you either sing this song or we're going to get someone else to do this scene. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll do my cameo and sing the song you want me to sing. So yeah, they didn't put any of my original music into the film. Unfortunately, not even on the soundtrack. What can you do? But that's how it goes. I shouldn't complain. Not many people get a Hollywood movie made about them, and especially while they're still alive. So I'm grateful for that.
With some A-listers too. I mean, this is a Todd Phillips movie.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's a pretty big deal. Obviously, Miles Teller playing you.
Right.
Jonah Hill, all names that people know at this point.
Yeah. So. Todd Phillips, I mean, for people who are not in Hollywood, a lot of people don't know directors, but Todd Phillips is the guy who made the Hangover movies before War Dogs. And after War Dogs, he made Joker, which is what he's most famous for now. And he saw War Dogs as kind of his transition from comedy to drama. That they actually call War Dogs a dramedy because it's kind of partial comedy, partial drama. So that was like his transition movie. And I thought he did a really good job with it. Honestly, when I first heard that he was going to be the guy making the film, I thought he was just going to make like another Hangover style film where it was going to be just ridiculous hijinks. And, I'd wake up from being blacked out on drugs next to a tiger or whatever, and it would just make me look completely ridiculous. And so I was like, oh crap, that's what I should prepare myself for. But I was very pleasantly surprised that he did a pretty good job on balancing the drama and the comedy and more or less historical accuracy. Obviously with plenty of Hollywood liberties taken, but But I thought by and large, I was pretty happy with the film, and I think they portray my character as a relatable, nice guy, which is completely 100% accurate. I'll say
that part they nailed.
That part they nailed 100% accuracy, exactly. That was an amazing experience. Not something I ever thought, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever expect a Hollywood movie to be made about any part of my life. But
how did it happen? That's the part I'm curious
mean,
about.
How did the film happen?
How did they get your story and then be like, we should make a movie about this? How does that happen for somebody?
So our story first got into, I guess you could say, the public domain when the New York Times published a very unflattering article about us. In the movie, they say, and this is actually true, that we got caught because, and for people who haven't seen the movie, there was some activities we did that were not completely 100% legal towards the end. I mean, everything was legal until it wasn't. And
that's how it works.
Yeah,
right?
that is how it works. And I'll be the first person to say, we made plenty of mistakes, and there are a lot of things that I did back then that I would never do nowadays. And but to make a long story short, the thing that we got in trouble for was repackaging Chinese ammunition and telling the government it was not Chinese. And the guy,
there's been some pedal companies that have done that in the past.
That is true. That is true. Though I will have to say that all the pedals that we make at Singular Sound, they do say "Made in China" on them, so we're not hiding it.
yeah. I was referring to a classic blunder in the gear community from years ago. Look up the Freakish Blues scandal if you ever want a deep dive on dumb internet guitar drama.
That is interesting. I think I've heard something along those lines. People don't like being lied to, and I totally get that. Even if the quality is the same, authenticity goes a very long way, and especially musicians. It's all about authenticity, and so we manufacture in China just like everyone else. I mean, your iPhone is made in China. Almost all your computers are made in China.
I don't think anybody cares as long as they know what the deal is.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as it's legal, right? So
sure.
So we design, our engineering team is in the United States, so everything's designed in the United States, but manufactured in China. So to go back to your original question of how they found us, the guy we hired to repackage the ammunition, the box guy, we called him, right?
Yep.
Because he ran a cardboard box factory, and so we needed a lot of cardboard boxes in order to repackage this ammo. So we hired him to do the repackaging job. Ephraim, my former partner, ended up screwing him out of like $20,000. A really tiny amount of money considering we had a $300 million contract, but
sure.
Ephraim was a very short-sighted person and and pretty much screwed everybody he was in business with, including me and including the people who he worked with after me. And that's just kind of how he was wired. And so he screwed this guy over at like $20,000, and that guy got really mad, as is reasonable, and he decided to tell the New York Times about what we were doing. And he also told the FBI about what we were doing, and he told the Albanian press. This was happening in Albania, the repackaging job. And so he told the Albanian press about it, and that he told the Albanian press ended up, unfortunately, getting him killed. Because the Albanian mob who was making money off this did not appreciate him trying to make a political stink about this. And so he died in mysterious circumstances.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so the New York Times was informed about the story, and they started investigating. And about 6 months after they were informed, they published this front page article about us, and it had our mugshots on the front page of the New York Times. Not flattering mugshots. We looked really bad. And you could Google this if you Google my name, and you look in the pictures section of Google search results. You'll see my mugshots. I don't look good. and our mugshots were right next to a picture of really rusty, nasty looking ammunition. And the New York Times said that was the ammunition that we were delivering, was this really low quality ammo. In reality, we did deliver the ammo that they published on the front page, the picture in the picture, but that was a tiny it was like 30,000 rounds out of like 200 million rounds. So it was a tiny fraction of a percent that we had delivered. And the Army always inspects everything before they pay for it, of course. And they had rejected this shipment and didn't pay us for it. And of course, they had no place to dispose it. So, and it was just a few pallets of ammo, so relatively nothing in the grand scheme of things. I mean, we're flying 3 to 4 aircraft loads a week, like that's 45 tons each. So this was like a couple pallets. And so they just left the pallets at the side of the runway because they didn't really have any place to put it. And so when the New York Times went to Afghanistan to investigate, that's the ammo that they saw, because everything else had been issued to the soldiers. So they got pictures of that. And then they kind of implied that this was the quality of all the ammo, which we were delivering, which was not true. But they made a big...
I know some soldiers that would have been over there at that time. And if it looked as bad as that does, they're not putting that in their mags.
No, exactly.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, of course not. And and it wouldn't even get to them, because the receiving officer would have did take one look at it and said, no way, there's no. And I mean, we were delivering 200 million rounds. Not everything's going to be perfect, of course.
That's not scale things get weird.
That's not to make an excuse for it. I mean, it was definitely a mistake, and we should not have done it, and we shouldn't have shipped it, and our inspection process should have been better. And I'll be the first one to admit that. But yeah, I mean, it did not. The reality was not as the New York Times portrayed it. It was not that we were that this was all the stuff we were delivering, and that's kind of how they made it seem. And because they made it seem like that, it created this huge scandal. And of course, they made a big deal out of how young we were. We were in our early 20s, and we were assigned this $300 million contract, and so which was totally bizarre, of course. And so that became a huge viral story. I had a Google alert on my name, and I saw this story get reprinted through the Associated Press in pretty much every major newspaper around the world. Like over 300 something newspapers reprinted this story from the New York Times. And so it became worldwide news. And
I remember when it happened before the movie.
Yeah.
I remember reading about it and being like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So never in a million years did I think I'd actually be talking to you.
Right.
At the
Yeah. And that was back in 2008. So that's quite a while ago. That's 15 years ago. And because it made such a huge stink in the media, Congress got involved, and they wanted to hold hearings about it. They did hold hearings about it. Actually, there's clips on YouTube about I think it was Henry Waxman, who was the lead guy in Congress at the time, and he had like a big poster board with like pictures of us in Congress, saying these are the schmucks, who are putting, our allies in danger by delivering low quality ammo. And they wanted us to subpoena us to testify in front of Congress. But of course, our lawyers told Congress that we just plead the fifth because we were under criminal investigation at the time. So Congress decided not to do the whole, show of having us there and just pleading the fifth. So we didn't end up testifying in front of Congress. But anyway,
thankfully.
Because exactly. Because the New York Times made it worldwide news, that got us out there, and Rolling Stone, of course, read about it, and they loved the story, because this is like Rolling Stone style story of young guys doing crazy. And so they sent a writer to interview us, Guy Lawson. He ended up writing the War Dogs book. He wrote this really long Rolling Stone article about us, which our lawyers made a deal with him that he would be allowed to interview us, but not allowed to publish it until all of our legal issues were resolved, which took 3 years until 2011. And so in 2011, Rolling Stone published this really long article about the story based on our interviews, and he also interviewed people in the government and other people involved in the story, and so he did a whole investigative journalism article about it. And Todd Phillips, director of the Hangover movies, saw this article in Rolling Stone and thought it was one of the coolest stories he'd ever read, and decided that this could make a great movie. And so he contacted Rolling Stone and optioned the rights to the article, and then they contacted me and optioned my life rights, as they call it, which they didn't have to do, actually. Legally in the United States, anyone could make a movie about you and not pay you a penny. And they could use your real name, and they could say anything they want about you, whether it's true or not, as long as your name has previously appeared in the media or in the public domain, as they call it. So once your name appears in the media, you are considered a public figure legally. Because of the First Amendment, anyone can make any film or book or any piece of artistic work based on any public figure, and they're allowed to say anything they want. It doesn't have to be accurate in the least. So they didn't actually have to get my permission or pay me a dime for anything, but they wanted their story, because they wanted to make it based on a true story. They wanted my cooperation, and so they bought my life rights, which they gave me not a small amount of money, but nothing even close to what the actors pretending to be me made. I'll tell you that. The guy pretending to be me made a lot more money than me. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes in Hollywood. So they bought my life rights, and they sent Stephen Chin, the screenwriter, to Miami to interview me for a couple weeks. And we spent a lot of time together. He interviewed me, recorded the conversations, and then he based the first iteration of the screenplay off of those interviews. And then Todd Phillips rewrote the screenplay over and over for the next year or so, until he got it into the formula he wanted, that he thought would make it a commercial success. And that's where you get stuff like the Triangle of Death scene, because he needed more action. And also in the film, there's a part where I'm lying to my girlfriend about being an arms dealer, and she dumps me because I'm such a lying piece of. And of course, that never happened either. My girlfriend at the time was completely aware of everything I was doing and had zero problem with it, as long as I was bringing in the money. And of course, Hollywood needed some relationship drama for the ladies in the audience.
Of course.
That's what the ladies like. So they knew that, this is going to be more of a guy-centered movie, as most arms dealing movies are, but a lot of guys are going to drag their girlfriends along to watch it with them. And so they had to give some relationship drama to satisfy the ladies in the audience. So they had to check that box. So that's how. The
other really super accurate part is your girlfriend at the time was Ana de Armas. Right? That was
yeah, absolutely. That's based on the true story right there.
I thought so. I assumed as much.
It's actually funny. I mean, my girlfriend was very beautiful, but she didn't look anything like Ana de Armas. She actually is mixed race. My girlfriend at the time, who is the mother of my daughter, is half African and half Spaniard. So
cool.
Yeah. So Ana de Armas is actually half Spaniard and half Cuban, I believe. So they are both half Spaniard. So I guess there's accuracy there.
They got close.
Yeah, they got the Spaniard part right. But my daughter's mother is much darker than Ana de Armas, and yeah. But that's how Hollywood.
Yeah, that's my attempt at a joke. Sorry.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. I actually met Anna, and she's just as beautiful in real life as she is in the movies. Yeah, and she's very nice. She's very nice.
She seems like a fun person.
Yeah. She's very, very sweet. And I also met Miles Teller and Jonah Hill, and of course, Todd Phillips, and they invited me on the set for a few scenes that they were filming while they were in Miami. And of course, I went out to LA to film my cameo for for where I'm playing guitar. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. Not something I ever expected to actually happen, but very cool that it happened. And of course, I got invited to the premiere, and that was really cool. Got to meet Bradley Cooper, and who's also in the film. And yeah, it was really neat. It was quite the experience. And actually, the arms dealing story is how, I know you asked me originally, like how it went from doing arms dealing to creating music gear, and it actually led directly into it.
Really?
Yeah. It was so. At the end of the arms dealing story, as I mentioned before, we got in a little bit of legal trouble, and for the whole repackaging the Chinese ammo thing, and I was very, very lucky. I ended up pleading guilty and was only sentenced to 7 months of house arrest. So I avoided prison completely, which I'm extremely grateful for, because I was looking at a long time in prison, and it's a whole thing about like how they do the charging in the United States. They pretty much said, we're going to charge you with 71 acts of fraud, one for each aircraft that landed in Afghanistan, and you can get 5 years in prison for each one. If you fight us, so you can get 355 years in prison, or you could plead guilty and we'll reduce all the 71 acts into one act, so you can get maximum 5 years. And because you're pleading guilty, we'll tell the judge to go easy on you, to give you the low end of the guidelines of the range. And so
it makes their job easier if you plead guilty.
Well, of course. I mean, and that's why they do it. And that's why the United States, the federal government, wins 98 point something % of the cases that they have, because they give people choices like this. Like, you're either going to spend the rest of your life in prison, or you're going to plead guilty. And even if you do want to fight in court, you need like a few $100,000 in order to do that, to get like at least a fighting chance. And I didn't have the money because my partner had screwed me out of all the money that was coming to me. So I didn't really have much of a choice. But
hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Maris Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Maris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations in 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man. That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my Pocky?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services. And it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there. Well, and as you've said, like there's a certain level of like, well, I did do part of it.
That is true, and that is true. Though it is, I will say, it's a bit more complicated than the surface level will say. Because I mean, I don't know how much you really want to get into it, but
I find it all very interesting. Okay. But we do need to get to your company.
Yeah. So I'll give you just a very brief, and I'm saying this not to excuse what I did. As I said, I made mistakes, and I will admit that I made mistakes, and there were some things that I did back then that I should not have done. But the legal case, as it was not so cut and dry. The ammo that we bought, so pretty much we were buying ammunition from Albania, which was originally from China. And the ammunition had been given to Albania in the 1970s as a gift because they formed an alliance, and that's a whole other story. And the reason that the United States does not allow U.S. companies to buy ammunition from China is because in 1989 there was the Tiananmen Square massacre, where a bunch of Chinese college students were protesting for democracy, and the Chinese army pretty much killed them all. And so so to punish China, the U.S. put them on the arms embargo blacklist. And so our contract with the U.S. Army, who was buying the ammo to give to our Afghan allies, our contract said no Chinese ammunition can be supplied under this contract, either directly or indirectly. And what they meant by that was you can't break the Chinese embargo, right?
No buying from China.
Right, no buying from China. I mean, that's why they put that in there. However, they didn't mention the embargo in there, right? So actually, technically, legally, I should say, the ammunition that was in Albania did not violate the embargo because it was given to Albania before the embargo existed. So you can buy a Chinese AK-47 or Chinese ammunition now in the United States legally, 100% legally.
I've seen it before.
Yeah. Because it was bought before 1989, imported into the United States while it was legal. And the embargo, it just applies to new business with China. It's not retroactive. It doesn't say all the stuff you ever bought is now illegal. That's not how it works. So the stuff that was in Albania did not violate the embargo. So it was technically legal to buy. But our commercial contract with the U.S. Army said no Chinese, period. So that wasn't necessarily a legal thing. It was a business commercial thing. So if we violated that contract, it was a breach of contract, yes, but that's not a criminal thing. That's a civil issue, right? So they could sue us, but it shouldn't have necessarily been a criminal charge. And so that was the legal argument for our defense. And if I had a few $1 million, maybe I would have tried to defend myself, but I didn't. And, so I didn't really have that much choice in the matter. And yeah, I will say we shouldn't have done that. We should have been straight up with the Army and honest and told them, hey, this is what's going on. I think you guys probably wrote this contract to be a little too overbroad because you meant to refer to the embargo and not to Chinese ammunition in general when it's legal. So can you guys give us an exemption? And that's what we should have done, but we didn't do that. We did it in a sneaky way, and that's what ended up burning us in the end. So I'm not going to say I didn't deserve what I got, and I am very lucky that what I got was not nearly what it could have been. I could have spent the rest of my life in prison, but I pled guilty, and the prosecutors decided to, because I pled guilty, and they said as they usually do when you plead guilty, they recommend to the judge that the judge gives you on the low end of the sentencing guidelines. And so the judge gave me just 7 months of house arrest, which was not so bad. It's a lot better. So bad. Yeah, a lot better. A lot better than prison. You get to, watch TV and be with your family and eat your own food. And
we all just had that for a couple of years, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I would say that it wasn't even as bad as that because people could visit me. There was no problem with people visiting me. I just couldn't leave my house. And I was even allowed to leave my house if I had like specifically for work. So I was allowed to work, but I had to tell the probation officer exactly where I'm going to be and what time I'm going to be there. So it wasn't even 100% lockdown like it was for everybody during COVID. So it was really, really a slap on the wrist. And I feel very lucky and grateful for that. But while I was in under house arrest, of course, since I'm a guitar player, I'm a singer, I was playing a lot of music to pass the time. And what I really missed playing in particular with a drummer, because the drums give the beat to the music. The beat is the energy. You dance to the beat, right? But of course, no drummer is going to lug all his gear to my little apartment. And even if he did, it would wake up my entire apartment building. So that wasn't really an option. And I couldn't leave my apartment to go to the recording studio. So I didn't really have a way to play with drummers. I had other musicians who could visit me and jam, but drummers couldn't. So I bought myself a drum machine for the first time, and in order to have beats to play along with.
Do you remember what that was?
It was
the gear nerds among us?
It was an Alesis, I think SR either 16 or 18. I think it was the SR16, I believe. And of course, the manual is like that thick, and these drum machines are primarily designed for beat composition, right? It's not really designed for accompaniment necessarily. I mean, you could use it for accompaniment to play your guitar or whatever along to, but that's not really what it's designed for. So every time I wanted to go from verse to chorus in the song, and I wanted the beat to change up, I'd have to stop playing my guitar and press a button on the drum machine and to change the beat, and then go back to playing my guitar. And of course, it interrupted the flow of the music, and it was very irritating. And I tried doing it with my toe, but I kept on missing the button and pressing the wrong button. It was just very uncomfortable. And I thought, there's guitar pedals. Why can't there be a drum machine in a guitar pedal? You could just press the pedal and control the beat that way. And so I was sure someone already made it. And so I went online to look for something like this, and I just couldn't find anything. The only thing I could find was some loopers have basic beats built into them, and they just play it. But the thing is that those beats are more or less like a metronome. You can't really interact with the beats. You can't control them. You can't switch them up from verse to chorus, or do drum fills, or pause the beat and unpause it, or anything that would make the beat interesting. It was just more or less a backing track. So, and that was, to me, I could just press, I could play a backing track from my phone or from a classic drum machine. I wanted something I could interact with so that it would sound more live. It would be more fun to play with. And I just couldn't find anything. And so I asked my musician friends if they'd seen anything like this. And they all told me, I'd never seen anything like this, but that sounds super cool. And if you find it, let me know, because I want to get one too. And all my musician friends told me that. And I was like, well, sounds like everyone wants this thing, including me, but nobody's making it. So this is a huge opportunity. And so I did a patent search, and I was shocked that nobody had even patented the idea of a hands-free drum machine. So I got the patent and hired an engineering team. And it took, originally I hired the wrong engineering team. They didn't really do much except waste my money and time. And I had to fire them after about a year of them not making progress.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
That sounds really familiar.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think that it's a common thing for most people. But eventually I found the right engineering team who did a great job, made a fantastic prototype. Of course, I didn't have the money to pay them. So I made a deal with them. I pretty much put every penny I had saved up, which wasn't that much, considering I had spent most of my money on lawyers to keep me out of prison at the time. So I only had enough money to do a small, pretty much 20% of what they were asking for. So we made a deal where I would give them the deposit, which was pretty much every dollar I had. So it was a big deal for me, but they would build a working prototype and then give that to me, and I would use the prototype to raise more money through crowdfunding or through investors, and then pay them the rest of it. Excuse me. And so we did that. I launched it as a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo, and it became extremely successful. At the time, it was a record for crowdfunding campaigns for a musical product. We raised $350,000 in a month, and that allowed me to pay off the engineers and get the first production rolling, and now we've been selling it since 2014. And a Beat Buddy for the people who are watching this on video, I'll hold it up to the camera. That's the Beat Buddy. It's a guitar pedal. You can press the pedal. It's got a nice screen on it, visual metronome on the screen, so you can watch the beat moving along the measure, which is very useful. Anytime you tap a fill, if you just tap the pedal, it does a drum fill. And you could also watch the visual metronome, so you know where that fill is going to end. If you hold the pedal down, it does a transition, and when you let go, it goes to the next beat. So you can go from like verse to chorus and back again. And if you tap it twice, it does an outro fill and ends the song. We also have an accessory we sell, like a standard 2-button foot switch that you can plug into the Beat Buddy and get additional functions like pause, unpause, accent hits like cymbal crashes. We also have additional things like that you could set it in the settings to do like double time, half time. You can connect like a MIDI controller and change up the tempo like slowly up and down. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this, and it comes with software for PC and Mac that you can put your own beats on it. You can also create your own drum sets using WAV files, so you can play any beat with any drum set. And you can, for example, play heavy metal and on a hand drums, or jazz on an electronic drum set. So it sounds really, really cool. You could really mix it up. So it's a very powerful hands-free drum machine accompanying device. And a lot of musicians have written to me over the years saying, a lot of solo musicians, like one-man band kind of artists, that without the Beat Buddy, their career wouldn't be what it was, because they are able to use the Beat Buddy to have a much fuller dynamic sound without having to rely on their percussionist, on their drummer. Now, I'll never say that this replaces a real life human. Of course, a drummer will always be better. But it is a great option for someone who can't get a drummer, can't get a percussionist to play along with. So that was our first product. And then we moved on to additional products. I don't know if you want me to get into all of them. Oh, by the way, I think you're muted.
I try to take a drink of water politely. And now I do that. That hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah,
look at that.
Yeah,
I do want to get into that. But I want to talk about the arrows specifically.
Yes,
because that's like the the Beat Buddy makes sense, right?
Yeah,
and the arrows make sense in the context of the Beat Buddy.
Yeah,
but wow, you from what I can tell, you bill it as a looper, but it seems like you packed in a whole new DAW into a pedal somehow.
That's exactly right. So the way the Eros Loop Studio came about, and I'm just turning it on, so I'll show you guys.
That thing.
Yeah, there it is,
and it looks so cool.
Yeah,
I just love how it looks. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's powering up right now. I'll hold it up to the camera once it's fully on. But So the way the arrows, the idea for the arrows came about was the Beat Buddy has MIDI, right? Has MIDI clock. It sends out MIDI time and as well as time signature and start stop.
So you could
commands.
use the Beat Buddy to trigger other things.
Correct.
If you want.
Correct.
Yeah.
You can integrate it into your rig. It can be used as a master or slave in a MIDI rig. So you could control it with MIDI controllers. It could also control other things. So people started using it as a drum machine to play along with loopers. MIDI capable loopers in order, because you need, when you're recording a loop, it needs to be the exact same length as the drum loop. Otherwise, they're going to go out of sync as they cycle around. So the only way you could really do that is with MIDI. Otherwise, it's going to be slightly off, and eventually it's going to go out of time. So people started using the Beat Buddy with MIDI-capable loopers like the Packouz Infinity, the Boss RC300, other various loopers that have MIDI capability. And they started asking me for more and more functions and features. And so I bought these loopers and I was using them and testing it with the Beat Buddy. And I realized, man, these loopers are, I've never been a looping guy. I've always been like a singer-songwriter. I just play mostly rhythm guitar and more concentrate on my vocals. And so I've never really done looping. And so I was using these loopers with the Beat Buddy, and I realized that looping is kind of hard. And and especially because in most loopers, there's no visual element to it. You have to kind of know just by remembering and listening where your loop begins and ends, right? Because if you want to stop the loop and it stops at the end of the loop, if you have like a 4-chord progression and you repeat that 4 times, are you on the first repetition? Are you on the third one? Are you on the second? You have no idea. So you don't know where that loop is going to end. And it's very difficult to be effective. And I also realized that a lot of loopers, they only have really just like one, they have what they call either parallel looping or sequential looping, right? Parallel looping is when you have multiple tracks that you can play at the same time. So, and this is for multi-track loopers. Of course, like the Ditto, the TC Electronic Ditto is just a single loop, right?
Sure.
So that, that's not a multi-track looper. It's just a single loop. But for things like the Infinity, for example, that has 2 loops, you have the option. You could either have them both going on at the same time, parallel looping, which the advantage of that is you can have the loops be different lengths. So let's say one loop is one measure of a simple chord progression, and the other loop is, let's say, a 4 measure melody built over that. So you could have, so that's the advantage of parallel looping, is that you can have loops of different lengths. But the advantage of sequential looping, meaning you play this loop and then you play that loop and then you come back to the other one, is that you can have like a verse chorus or multi-section performance. You can have a verse, a chorus, a second verse. But I hadn't seen any loopers that have both. And so I realized that if we make, and I've also had not seen any looper that has a screen on it, just like your DAW has a screen that you could actually see the waveforms being recorded. And that obviously is much easier visually to know where you are. You actually see where you are in the loop. You know where the end is coming. It makes it much, much easier to do looping when you have that visual feedback. But all the loopers out there did not have any screens on it. They had barely any indication of where you are in the loop. And so it's much, much more difficult. So I realized if I create a looper that has a screen, just like a DAW, it would be much easier to loop. And not only would it be easier, but it would be a lot more capable. You could build in functions to it that no other looper has. And so here,
and you can actually know that you're recording.
Exactly. Know you're recording, you know when it's playing back. So here I'll, 1 second. Oh, okay. So, I guess I never saved that song.
Oops.
I was about to do
just like a DAW.
Yeah, exactly. Hang on 1 second. I wanted to, let me just get the other power supply so I can show you how it works. All right, I'm just going to plug the Beat Buddy into the arrows just to give it some sound. I'm not going to actually play the sound, but just so you have the visual idea of what this thing can do.
Yeah.
So if you, I'm just going to hold it up to the camera here.
All right, sounds good.
Here, so the Beat Buddy, and so when you press the record button right here, you see the waveform. Right.
Yep.
Going across there. Right. And then, you see where the loop, you see that bright red line is where the loop ends. You see the yellow is where it's overdubbing. So you can see the different layers of the loop. Green is like the base layer, and yellow is like the overdub layer. And then I'm going to the next track here. So, and you see where that loop is going to end. So you know exactly, you could keep it in time. Now there's a lot of settings you can put on here. So there's different styles of looping. You could do what we call freeform, where there's no clock and it's just internal. And we also have auto quantize, where it figures out what the tempo is.
That's helpful.
Yeah, very helpful. And it could also record to an external MIDI clock like the Beat Buddy. But another thing that we built that nobody else had done before was a different song part arrangement. You see it just move from that thing, from that dot to that dot, and that indicates a new song part. So I can create multiple song parts, up to 6 actually. I could create up to 6 song parts, and each song part has up to 6 independent tracks. So it's a 6-track looper for each song part. So in total, per song, you can have 36 tracks, and each track has unlimited overdub layers. And here, I'll show you another feature. It's kind of awkward holding this up like this, but here, 1 second. Here, I'll do one more. There we go.
It's got my nerd brain just going 100 miles an hour right now. You can do so many things with this.
You can do so many things with it. Here, 1 second. So here, I'm going to go back into the first. I'll record one more track. And here, so if you do... There we go. Yeah. It's going to, right?
And for the audio only people, I'm just kind of describing what I'm looking at here. Basically, there's a screen on top of the pedal that you can clearly see everything that's happening. So on the audio only people, you're hearing the clicking right now. That is him enabling different tracks, putting layers over different tracks, and also creating different musical parts. Now, obviously, there's no music being played right now, but he's using the Beat Buddy's input into it.
Right. Just
so
to
I can
show,
see what's...
just to show the waveforms. And if I press this, if I hold this button down, the lower left button, you see it brings up this hands-free slide-out menu. And you could use the wheel on the unit to have all these different features. You can't really see it that well on screen, but you have many, many different features. Like you could reverse a track, you could mute it, undo, you could solo a track. And this is really cool. You could have a mixer, on-screen mixer, and now you have hands-free mixing of all the tracks. So you can select a track and then use the hands-free wheel here to lower the volume here, increase the volume there. You could mute something, solo something. So you have, as you said, it's kind of like a DAW in a pedal format. And that allows you to do many, 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 many things that you couldn't do with other loopers out there.
Right. And you could build out, I'm picturing this as how I would use it if it were me. I would be building out like whole tracks, because I play very weird. I don't play out, but the way I construct songs, especially for my solo stuff, and I've told listeners this before, I'll have like a table full of guitar pedals of just a crazy amount of weird signals going everywhere, and 3 amps and all kinds of things. And I'll play the pedals as much as I'm playing the guitar. So if I was to actually try to do some of that live, it'd be a mess. It'd be really difficult. But if you had something like, this is why the Arrows was like, whoa, look at that. You could build all of that beforehand, or at least to portions of it that are difficult to do, and then do the other portion of the live, but you could have it all ready to go, and so the experience would be the same. So I was like, wow, what a cool concept.
A lot of people use it in that way. They create their like pre-made sections of the song, and then they'll like have their live sections of the song that they do. So there's just so many ways. And this thing, the Arrows, it has Wi-Fi connection. So
I was going to ask about that. I saw that on there just now. I didn't realize that. What's that for?
So we send out software updates over the air, just like to your phone. So we've been constantly updating it ever since we released it in 2019. It's like a brand new product now. It's got so many more capabilities now than it had when we initially launched it. And the reason for that, I mean, we knew it was going to be an evolution, which is why we built the Wi-Fi capacity in, because there's just so many different ways that people loop. There's different styles of looping, and people have different gear setups, and we didn't know everything about the way people loop and the different gear that they use. So we have a very active user forum on our website. We have a lot of people who use our gear, and they put requests up there, and they report bugs, and we have a very active development team that responds to that and takes people's suggestions and bug reports and fixes the things that are broken and builds new features that people want. So, for example, I'll give you a little example of like a looping style that we had to adjust to. As I said, I am personally more of a singer-songwriter. So, when I think of looping, I think I'm going to use the Beat Buddy as my drummer. I'm going to have it trigger the arrows to go to different, like when you hold the Beat Buddy down to do a transition, you go from one beat to another. It'll trigger the arrows to go to a new section. So I could record a new section and get it all synced up. And so that's more how I use the Beat Buddy and the arrows together. But there's a lot of looper artists out there who are soundscape artists, and they don't even use drum machines with their loops. They just build all these like atmospheric, cool sound layers. And one thing that they wanted was by default, the way the Arrows works is you press the button and it starts recording. You press the button again and it stops recording and starts playing back, right? The loop. And if you press the button again, it does an overdub or another layer on top of the loop. Now, what they wanted is they didn't want it to go directly from record to playback. They wanted to go directly from record to overdub, which if you were looking closely, that's actually the setting that the unit I was demoing was under. And the reason they wanted that was because they have all these cool effects that have what they call effect tails, right? At the end of the loop, it like it echoes or reverberates or something, but they want it to be recorded on top of the beginning of the loop, not like as an extra space. So we had to build a setting so that you could change what we call RPO, or record play overdub, to ROP, record overdub play, to change the order of it. And that's something, I mean, I'm not a soundscape artist, so I didn't think of that. But when we released the product and people started using it, they insisted on our forum that this was critical for a whole segment of the looping community. And so we built that in. And that's just one example of many, many features that would be
important for me. Yeah.
So there you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I've got all kinds of, I'll put a reverb with a distortion on it. And then in the other output, I'll be putting, a different kind of reverb with a delay that I'm modulating the repeats on. And if it was to cut off, it would be kind of useless, which is
exactly. So.
But from your perspective, I see why it was originally the other way around.
Yeah. And that's the powerful thing about the Arrows, is because it's got a touch screen and Wi-Fi updates, we could build all these things into it. I mean, within reason, of course. There are definitely certain limitations, but like things like this, and it's just there's such a wide range of looping styles that we knew it would be impossible for us to know every little detail. And of course, and there's some big things, like some things that to a lot of people are obvious that we miss. Like, for example, this, from your perspective, you'd be like, how could you not think of this? And from my perspective, I'm like, I don't know. I didn't even know that this was an issue. And and we knew it would be like things like that, but like 100 other things like that as well, which is why we built the Wi-Fi updates, the Wi-Fi capability into it, because we wanted to make it as easy as possible to update it and to expand the capabilities of it, and which is what we've done, and we're continuing to do. We actually have a new firmware schedule to come out, I think, in the next week or two, and that one is going to significantly expand the MIDI capabilities, because a lot of people want to use other MIDI products, MIDI controllers with the Eros. Like, for example, some people want to they want to use like a mixer, a MIDI mixer, to control the MIDI tracks on to control the mixer on the Eros with a MIDI controller, because they don't want to use their foot with the wheel, right? Because they would rather just do it with their hand. Now, I mean, from my perspective, the wheel works fine with my foot, but I totally understand that a lot of people don't want to use their foot, and they prefer to just take their hand off their instrument and adjust the levels by hand from their tabletop MIDI controller. So, or
maybe they're playing keys or something,
exactly,
so they're already up there.
Exactly. Yep. So there's so many different iterations and styles and gear combinations that we try to make it as flexible as possible to appeal to the largest segment of musicians. So this new update is going to have that feature in it, as well as many, many other features that people have been asking us for. And if anyone's curious, you could check out our forum at singularsound.com. I think it's under the support section. There's a link to the forum that you'll see. We have a very, very active forum where a lot of people request a lot of things. And I'm not saying we say yes to everybody, but we try try to say yes to as many people as possible, because it's actually really crazy, because some people, they go all out. Like some of our customers, I've gotten PDFs posted to the forum where someone like redesigned the entire like user interface and button configuration, and like it was so complicated I didn't even understand what it meant. And I was like trying to and it was obviously not intuitive, because otherwise I would have understood it. So, something, and he put a lot of effort into it. So I take it very seriously. I read every suggestion. But for something like that, I obviously thought it would not be an improvement for the vast majority of people. So that request is declined. But I do take very seriously everybody's requests. And because I approach product design from what I try to approach it from a place of humbleness, of being humble and realizing that I don't know everything, and that there's no way I could know everything, because there's just such a wide range of people out there who are going to use this product. And so I always listen to everybody's suggestion and try to build it to be as flexible as possible in order to satisfy everybody. But of course, you're never going to satisfy everybody. You can just try.
You can just try.
Yeah.
I'm relating to this on a lot of levels right now. Is you're talking about, people using things in ways you weren't expecting, or needing to get outside input. And I don't know if you're aware, but I'm a part of Stringjoy Guitar Strings. And so, right now we're working on making strings for other instruments.
Ah, cool.
Well, nobody plays some of these things that we're working on at the shop. So we have to send them out to people we trust that do play some of these.
Right.
Like we know how to make a string, and we know there's a lot of different ways you can make a string.
Sure.
So we have definitely applied our knowledge from making guitar and bass to these other instruments, but whether they're good or not, we have to get a bunch of feedback.
Absolutely.
Because I'm like, I'm not going to spoil it, but I don't play XYZ, so I can't tell you if it's good or not.
Right. No,
guitar, bass, I can tell you. But,
it's very true. I mean, that's the moment of truth is when the person who's actually going to be using this product uses it and gives you their feedback. And you can't just rely on one person. You have to rely on many people, because there's many different opinions out there, many different iterations and styles of musician and gear. And so that's why you have to get as much feedback as possible. And I've always felt very strongly that that the best products come when the people who make the products listen to the customers, to as broad of a range of customers as they can, and then make decisions that will satisfy not everybody, but as many people as they can without compromising the core functionality. Because I mean, that is, if you try to satisfy everybody, you're usually going to satisfy nobody. Because it's going to be just such a compromise that it's going to leave everyone dissatisfied. So there is a very fine balancing act there of satisfying most people to a sufficient level that it's a great product for as many people as possible, without making it a mediocre product for everybody.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Which is the tendency.
It happens. Things that are designed by committee can go too far. At some point, you have to define the line at some point.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the only way. It's the only way to make a good product. Yeah. Well,
I feel like I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, thank you.
There's so many things to go into and talk about, but we're reaching the end of the main episode, and I have a few classic questions I like to wrap this up on.
Sure.
But before I do that, I like to give the guests the chance to take the floor. Shout out your grandma, plug anything you want to plug.
Yeah.
Say hi to anybody you want to say hi to. You got a few thousand people you're talking to.
Yeah, sure. Hang on one second. There's just 2 more products that I'd like to plug.
Go ahead. Yeah, perfect.
Let me just grab them so I could show it to the people who are watching this on video.
Do it.
Hang on one second.
Let's do it. Yeah.
We are brought to you today by Sweetwater, specifically the Gear Exchange. You may have heard about this. This is a place where you can go to buy and sell your used gear. Maybe you got a pedal over there that's just kind of collecting dust. Maybe there's something you've been eyeing from the Sweetwater catalog. Well, right now is a great time to turn that unused gear into something you're actually going to use. Even better, if you sell on the Gear Exchange, you can keep 100% of the sale as long as you choose a Sweetwater gift card as your payout method. That is not too shabby because, let's be honest, most of this buying and selling we do is just to fund new gear purchases, and that is a great way to reach a wide variety of customers and keep 100% in your pocket, or rather on your pedal board. So go check out the Sweetwater Gear Exchange and turn that unused gear into something that's actually going to help you write that next huge riff.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Goodhertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblinssaudio.com. I think you're going to like what you find.
All right, I'm back.
All right,
okay.
Back.
So the first product I'd like to plug. Literally,
let's go for it.
I'm going to plug it in right now. So plug it in so I could plug it. Is our MIDI floor controller, the MIDI Maestro.
Oh, very cool.
Got it. It's not really coming out that great on screen because it's always hard to film screens. But
it is.
The idea behind the MIDI Maestro. So I came up with this product, the MIDI Maestro, because people were asking for all these new features on the Beat Buddy, like double time, half time, having hands-free, like fine tempo control, like, being able to go up like 1 BPM at a time with a button tap, or being able to select the next song on the Beat Buddy hands free so they don't have to bend over on stage, and multiple accent hits, like not just being able to do like cymbal crashes like you could do with the standard 2-button foot switch, but with like being able to do kick drum and snare and clap and stuff like that. So a lot of different features that people were asking. And of course the Beat Buddy is a single pedal. and
Sure.
we have a 2-button foot switch that you could plug into the Beat Buddy. So there's only so much you could do with 3 controllable things. So of course, because the Beat Buddy is MIDI compatible, you could use MIDI floor controllers. And so I was using these MIDI controllers, but they were all super complicated to learn. You practically needed a computer science degree to program them. and none of them had like any screens or anything. So you'd have to pretty much put a little piece of tape over the button and write with a Sharpie of what that button is doing, and then you can't really change it because that otherwise you're going to have another piece of tape and remember what mode it's in. So what we did is we designed this 6-button floor controller, MIDI floor controller. Each button has a little screen above it, which I'm trying to like get the angle so you could actually see, but yeah, it's not. This is it's not coming out, but
that's all right.
Yeah. No, it's still not coming up. And so each screen tells you like the command, that the MIDI command that button will do, and you could actually press a button, like another button, and it'll change all the commands like to a different bank, or we call them pages. So you have, so even though it's just a 6-button MIDI controller, you can have many different commands depending on what you're doing. So we have like one. For example, this will be like accent hits. So you press that, and then each of these buttons does a different accent hit. Like this does clap, tambourine, hi-hat, snare, kick. That triggers those sounds in the Beat Buddy.
Cool.
Another one will do like select part. And then you could have like each button does like a different song part on the Beat Buddy. So instead of having to go from like part 1 to part 2 to part 3 back to part 1, you could skip from part 1 to part 3 back to part 2. And so you can have a lot more flexibility of what beat you're playing on the Beat Buddy. And we made it so that this has Bluetooth connection, and we made a Android and iOS app that you can program these buttons easily. So this is not just usable for the Beat Buddy; it's usable for any MIDI compatible device. And we also have an online library of MIDI commands, so that and profiles. So you can download, let's say, you want to use this with a particular product, you could find a profile for that product and just download a ready-made thing right to it, so you don't have to do any MIDI programming yourself, which a lot of musicians really hate to do. To look through the manual of the device you want to program the controller for, and find the specific MIDI commands for each command, for each thing, and program it in. So you can download a ready-made profile for that piece of gear onto the MIDI Maestro. Takes all the hassle out of it and makes it much easier. And of course, you could adjust it and edit it with the smartphone app. So that's the MIDI Maestro.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
there's a lot of Chase Bliss and hologram people and Maris fans that listen to this that I'm sure are going,
I will say that the online component of the of sharing like gear profiles is new. We released it not that long ago, so there might not be that much up on it now, but I invite all of your listeners to create and share their own gear profiles for the community, because that would be amazing. So if you want to make like something for a Chase Bliss product or whatever, you can create a profile, share it online through our app, and then anyone else could download it and put it on their MIDI Maestro and avoid the hassle of actually reading manuals, and which everyone hates to do. So So that's the MIDI Maestro. And then our simplest product, our least expensive product, is the Cably. And what this is
I haven't seen this one.
Yeah,
the other ones I was familiar with. Okay.
This is a little plastic wheel. So I came up with the idea for this because I was playing some shows, and I have a lot of gear. I sing, I play guitar, I have vocal effects, guitar effects. I have the Beat Buddy, and so I had a lot of cables. And at the end of the show, I'm like wrapping all these cables around my arm and detangling them. And, people like spill beer on it and they have to clean it and all this stuff. And, and if you have a lot of cables, sometimes they become a big mess on stage and you could trip over them. And it's just like a big disaster. So My mom she loves gardening, and she had a big garden hose on a wheel that she would roll up. And so I thought, why don't I make like a much smaller version of this wheel for audio cables? So instead of wrapping this thing around my arm, or doing the over-under method as you're supposed to do, right? Which nobody does, or at least nobody lazy does, right? Then I could just have this wheel and just wind it up. And so that's what we created the cably. You just put any cable in there, and when you want to, and the cool thing is that, let's say you have a 20-foot cable, it works up to 30-foot cables, as long as they're like standard diameter. You can, if you have a 30-foot cable, but you're only like 4 feet from your guitar amp and from your pedal board, you could just take out, a couple feet out of the cably, put the cably on the ground, and you plug in your cable, and then your cable is nice and neat in this tiny little package. It's only about like 6-7 inches in diameter, about an inch and a half thick, and then your cable is protected. If nobody's going to step on it and break it, it's not going to get tangled, messy. And then when you're done with your show, all you have to do is just wind it up. And there you go. Boom, you're done. Nice and neat.
Done.
You have your cable all put away. Takes literally 10 seconds. And we sell them in like, you could buy a single one, but we also sell them in packs of 4 with like a nice little gig bag, little like a duffel bag that you can put all your cables in and travel with. And just takes all the hassle.
And they don't take up any more room really than if you just had a cable.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
It's wound up smaller.
It's wound up so small that even if it doesn't really take up much room. In fact, it actually takes up less room from because when you're wrapping it on your arm, or it's usually it's about like maybe like a foot in diameter or something, which is
even over undering it's going to be bigger than that.
Exactly.
So, very cool.
It's more compact, keeps your cables protected for travel, and makes setup and breakdown faster and easier. So Cably, CABLI. But of course, you could see all our products at Singular Sound. SingularSound.com. I got my logo. There it is, right there.
It's behind you. You're all
exactly.
good.
Yeah, exactly. It's anyone who's watching this on video can't get away from the brand. But
and of course, that'll be in the show notes for everybody that's listening. Perfect. You can check it there and just click through, and you'll be able to find all that stuff.
Perfect. Yeah.
So right on, man.
Yeah, and of course, we also sell professional level beats and drum sets that people can buy for their Beat Buddy and add additional content.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So that's another aspect of our business. We sell digital content for the Beat Buddy, but you could also get a lot of free digital content on the forum. A lot of people make their own content and upload it for free. So there's literally thousands and thousands of additional Beat Buddy beats, songs on the forum available for free download, as well as many, many drum sets with varying levels of quality, I will say. It's user made, so some of it's really, really good, and some of it not as good. But we do sell professional level stuff as well that people can download. So the Beat Buddy is like a constantly expanding product with the content, as well as we put out firmware updates and add additional capabilities to it, as well as to our other products like the MIDI Maestro and the Eros Loop Studio. So we're constantly enhancing the capabilities of it.
Very cool, man. Very cool. All right. Well, I think we'll get into the classic questions, and we'll put a bow on this thing. What do you say?
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right. First one, and this is I'll be very curious to get your take on this. Sure. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Ooh, Boss pedal. I mean, I guess I, like most guitarists, grew up on Boss pedals. But the truth is, and this is kind of ironic, being that I run a pedal company, that I was never super into pedals in general, just because I've always, as I said, I've always been a singer-songwriter, mostly playing acoustic, rhythm and singing. So I never really played, I never really used that many pedals in general. So I think the first pedal I ever bought was a Boss distortion pedal. I think it was the OS1 maybe.
DS1?
Oh, DS1 maybe. Yeah.
DS1?
Yeah. DS1. Yes.
The Kurt Cobain pedal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and actually Kurt Cobain is who inspired me to play guitar in the first place. When I first heard that twang guitar riff of "Smells Like Teen Spirit" as a 15-year-old boy, I was like, "That is the coolest sounding thing ever! I need to learn how to play that." I was like super motivated to learn how to play that, and of course, that's an electric guitar with distortion, so that's what I got into, but ended up moving much more towards acoustic, so not really playing that with that many pedals. I will say that nowadays my favorite pedal, I know this isn't exactly the question you asked, but nowadays my favorite pedal it's not a Boss pedal. Of course, my favorite pedal, I should say, other than the products that I've created.
Sure, right? Sure.
Because I'm definitely biased on that. But my favorite non-singular sound pedal would be the TC Helicon Singer, a harmony singer, because as a singer, being able to pop in some harmonies at just the right time in a live show, it just blows the audience away. It really does. And that pedal is just so well made. The sound is so good. It's so simple and yet so powerful. I couldn't say enough good things about the TC Helicon Harmony Singer. It's just a brilliant pedal and adds a huge amount to any singer-songwriter's performance. It's actually kind of funny because when I do live shows, I have my Beat Buddy and I have the TC Helicon Harmony Singer. And after the show, people always ask me about the Harmony Singer pedal.
You're like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, what about that other pedal? Isn't the drum machine awesome? But they're always paying attention because, I mean, I guess naturally from the audience perspective, they're always focused on the voice, rather than the drums. A musician will tend to ask about the Beat Buddy pedal because it's a lot less common. People know about harmony pedals, but a lot of people still don't know about the Beat Buddy, even though it's been out since 2014. So if it's a musician, they'll usually ask me about the Beat Buddy, but like a random audience member will usually notice the harmony pedal a lot more than the drums.
Yep, yeah, for sure. Well, they just see you up there, but they hear the harmonies. So
exactly.
Yeah.
They're like, wait a second, there's two people singing, So that blows them away. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Final question. And this might be the most controversial question you've ever been asked. I don't know. We'll find out. Yeah,
I'm scared.
Probably not, considering your past. But what's your favorite kind of pizza?
Ooh, very controversial. Yeah, I won't go near the pineapple. I don't want to get canceled. But I actually, if I had to pick one, it would be barbecue chicken pizza. Barbecue chicken pizza, because it's got chicken, which has nice amount of protein on it, and I love chicken, of course, and the barbecue sauce has like a sweetness to it, and I'm like, I've got a huge sweet tooth, so but it's barbecue, so it's not exactly like
pure sugar.
Exactly. It's not pure. It's sweet, but it's got that barbecue flavor to it, which goes really well with the chicken and really well with the cheese. And now I'm getting hungry thinking about it.
I feel like barbecue chicken is gaining popularity. I was never super into barbecue chicken, but my wife has made her own kind of version of it with. And this, I was like against. I was like, this pizza is not going to be any good. There's no way. This barbecue chicken with a little bit of blue cheese.
Oh, I love blue cheese.
I love blue cheese. I was just like, there's no way this combination is going to work. I took one bite, was like, I'm just kidding. I'll have the whole pizza.
Yeah. I mean, there is a huge variety, I think, in the quality of pizzas, depending on where, who makes it and, where you get it. And
sure.
For anyone who's in the Miami area, I will recommend a specific pizza place that I think is the best in Miami. It's called Andiamo's Pizza, like Andiamo,
Yeah.
Andiamo's Pizza it's near the Wynwood area of Miami. So if anyone's in the Miami area, check out the barbecue chicken pizza from Andiamo's Pizza. It'll blow you away. Amazing.
All right.
My favorite pizza ever made.
You did it. I was going to be my next question. Is there any specific place? And you already anticipated my move. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah. Right. Andiamo's Pizza. Highly recommend it. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll slide over to Patreon. So what kind of mischief we can get into? Does that sound good?
Perfect.
All right, everyone. For David, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. Alrighty, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that tale. David and I got really weird on the Patreon. We got a little bit existential. We talked for, I think, around 45 or 50 minutes, and we dove deep into AI and what we think this means for music and what it means for humanity and all kinds of different things. It was not a conversation I anticipated on having, but that is kind of the way Patreon goes sometimes. So if you would like to check that out, please head over to patreon.com/tonemob and check it out. I'm going to be doing some more stuff there. Patreon has done some interesting changes really, really recently. It may allow me to open up some free tiers so that we can have a little more direct one-on-one communication, bypass those algorithms a little bit. So I will explore that and I will keep you all posted. But in the meantime, if you'd like to support the show, it's still just $5 a month. $5 a month will get you access to the entire back catalog of Patreon episodes, and some of them are my very best episodes. I'm not even making that up. I have been told that from multiple Patreon supporters. So if it's at all possible, I would really appreciate the help there. It really helps out massively, massively. Thank you so much to everybody that does that. But if it's not in the cards, I totally get it. But I would still appreciate you telling somebody about it. If you tell somebody about this podcast enough times, there's a very good chance they will download it. And it is massively helpful. This show only keeps going and keeps growing because you people tell people about it. There are no algorithms currently to help push this thing along. This is all people sharing the RSS feed with others that they think may enjoy it. So please, if you can, share this with somebody. It would mean the world to me. All right, folks, I will talk to you very soon. I've got a lot of content coming your way from GearFest. Please stay tuned to the socials. Join the Tone Mob Facebook group. And I'm going to be trying to get a little more active on the Discord. We have a Discord. It's there. I am not as in it as I should be, and I'm going to try to fix that. All right. Anyway, I think that's enough plugging. Let's log off. Let's call this good. Let's get off of this podcast and get to something useful. All right. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.
Hey, this is Aaron from No Simple Road. I'm inviting you to come hang out with Apple, Mel, and I as we talk with the musicians, artists, chefs, authors, and beyond from the world that turns us on. We're reaching into the improvisational music scene, the psychedelic culture, the festival world, and getting to know what makes the people tick that create those scenes. Come join us on the long, strange trip over at No Simple Road.
Hey everyone, this is Tuck from Fit for a King, an off-road minivan. Every week I bring you fun interviews alongside your favorite metalcore entertainers with my new podcast, Get Tucked. Join me every Monday with bands like Counterparts, Crystal Lake, like Moths to Flames, and many more. We play unsigned and undiscovered bands, deep dive into each artist's history, and of course provide the greatest breakdowns in current metalcore. Tune in to Get Tucked every Monday, out now through Sound Talent Media.